could have called it Dot Hack Part 2, More of the Same. I'm Greg Kasavin, and I'm here to tell you about Dot Hack Part 2, Mutation, which is the follow-up to the first Dot Hack game, which was released only 3 months ago by Bandai. It's this episodic action RPG series that has a very unusual premise. It's set in a near-future world in which the population is obsessed with a massively multiplayer online RPG called The World. Everybody plays it, and the first Dot Hack game starts off where someone learns that his friend fell into a coma after the two of them experience an unusual in-game event. So the player continues on playing The World in hopes of unraveling the mystery of what appears to be a giant conspiracy surrounding this game. It's a strange kind of meta-game premise. You're playing a game within a game, but once you get past that, you'll find that Dot Hack is actually a pretty simple and straightforward game, one whose gameplay and apparently whose plot doesn't really hold enough depth to make it worth spreading out across 4 different games. It was a bit disappointing that the first Dot Hack game, Infection, ended before anything really interesting happened in the plot, and it's all the more disappointing that the second game is basically the same exact thing all over again. It's not just the same old gameplay as what was found in the February release of Infection, but it's even more the same kind of carrot on a stick plot types of things where really, you know, situations are set up but very, very little is actually resolved, and new characters are introduced but they're forgettable and seem to have little bearing on what's actually going on, things like that. So if you played through Dot Hack Infection and were hoping that Dot Hack Part 2 Mutation would make good on some of the promises of the first game, you might be disappointed to find that this game just really continues dragging its feet and doesn't do anything new in terms of gameplay. Once again, you'll play as a character named Kite, and once again you can join forces with a number of other characters who you met in the first game, as well as some new ones who you'll meet in the second. You can actually import your save data from the first Dot Hack game and pick up right where that game left off, and really the game doesn't make much of an effort to bring you up to speed if for some reason you haven't played the first Dot Hack game. On its own merits, this follow-up game is every bit as good as the first one. It's also about 15 or 20 hours long. It's got basically the same graphics and sound as the first game did, but your experience of, you know, playing more of the same is probably going to feel a bit worse this time around, just because you know, the second installment of Dot Hack is much like the first, only without the originality. There's only one small new town in Dot Hack Part 2. There are a few new types of enemies, some new items. You know, you start out at a higher level and you advance to an even higher level over the course of the game, but the combat remains roughly the same kind of pseudo-real-time hack-and-slash action as what was seen in Infection, the first part of the series. And really there isn't much new or anything new in the second chapter of the series that you didn't see in the first. The plot does take, you know, a couple of interesting twists at a couple of points, but this is spread out so thinly over the course of a 15 or 20 hour game that it seems like little consolation. Dot Hack Part 2 is a full-priced game. Like the first one, it comes with an anime DVD as if to make amends for the fact that there isn't a whole lot to it. I stress that this isn't a sequel so much as a follow-up game, you know, reusing the same graphics and sound and everything. Perhaps that's what you'd expect, considering this follow-up was released only 3 months after the first one. And really, if this follow-up game is any indication, then it seems clear that the Dot Hack series isn't headed in the right direction. It's just going to kind of drag on. This gameplay is too simple. You're just going through these randomly generated dungeons over and over and over. There's a very good chance that you got sick of the gameplay well before the conclusion of the first game, so to have to go through it all over again in the second game, much less for a third and a fourth installment, seems kind of ridiculous, but that's Bandai's plan apparently, and we'll see if Dot Hack's Part 3 and Part 4 do anything to change this formula up any, but as it is, on its own merits, you know, the second Dot Hack game, it's got some solid mechanics, it looks and sounds pretty good, but it's a disappointing follow-up to the first game, and you know, unless the first game really hooked you in, then I wouldn't recommend it.
Emma, please give me a